Kim Sturgess. I'm the CEO and founder of Alberta Water Smart, which is a not-for-profit organization committed to improving water management in Alberta through better practices and technologies. So we would work with policymakers, with oil sands companies, with communities and cities and water managers all over the province to improve the way water is managed.
What are metrics in the oil sands to you?
Well, I think metrics, for anyone, the metrics are ways to be able to measure your performance, to develop best practices, make sure that you're improving the way you manage, and also communicate what you're doing in an effective way. And I think this is the basis that we need to have for metrics in the oil sands. I mean, if you measure it, you can manage it, and you can make it better.
And so what are examples of metrics? When you think about metrics on the oil sands, what do you think about?
Well, I'm a water person, so I always think about metrics that have to do with water use, water consumption, the amount of water that we're utilizing per barrel of production. Another thing that I think is really important is looking at these metrics on a regional basis as well. So we're not just looking at a company by company, but being able to assess water management and water performance of our water systems across the entire region. So I think it's an industry performance as well as a corporate performance that we need to have a look at.
So there seems to be an interest in capturing or coming up with some metrics that all of the different groups and folks involved in these issues can relate to. Why is it important to do that at this time in history? The oil sands have been going for almost 40 years now, or probably more than 40 years now.
Well, I think, I think it's been something that operated and operated well, but frankly below the radar for many years, and for various sets of reasons, this industry is now well above the radar. I mean, I'm looking at water use around the world. I mean, the oil sands, the amount of water that's actually consumed in oil sands production is so small compared to other uses. However, as we start to see water become a more valued and scarce resource around the world, we're starting to see a big pressure. I mean, even if you use a drop of water, to make oil sands or to make any kind of energy right now, it's being scrutinized. I mean, because that drop of water could have been used to make food, and people are starving. So I think the urgency here, the reason why this has become so high profile now is an awareness around the world of the urgency, certainly in my area, in water, and the fact that there's a perception that so much water is being used to produce this resource.
If we come up with a bunch of measures that are acceptable, how would they be used in your view?
Well, I think that it's totally dependent on what the audience is. Certainly the oil sands, the companies themselves, the producers, they want to use these metrics to be able to measure their own performance. As Clyde called it, what is his league sheet this morning? I mean, by comparing folks to each other, you encourage behavior. I think benchmarking, being able to improve operations by saying here's a benchmark. Well, now we want to do better. So the companies themselves are like that. That's one place information can be used. The regulators use it, of course, for regulatory purposes to make sure there's compliance with what the rules and regulations are. Right to media who want to use this to be able to tell a story, to people in governments around the world that want to decide on what kinds of policies they should have relevant to use, to the financial experts. And I think that's the sleeper in this whole thing, is the financial community, the insurance community, who are now looking at oil sands and looking at risks associated with that. And they're using those metrics to decide whether or not to invest in one energy form versus another energy form, our oil sands, and then within our oil sands, which companies to invest in.
So what do you see as the role of oil sands in a world where we're trying to reduce our carbon footprint?
Well, I think about oil sands and North American energy security, and in a world where there's all sorts of very different things going on with sources of energy in other parts of the world. If we can have our oil sands resource and tie that in with our shale gas resources and be energy self-sufficient within our own borders, and use that as a transitional time to allow us to move forward and get into the alternate, really adopt the alternate forms of energy, which we know are coming. I do believe oil sands is a transitional fuel. But it's our fuel. It's here in Alberta, and I think we have an obligation to produce that and to make that available in the most environmentally sound way that we possibly can.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for talking to us.
Good. Thank you.